She was 4 years old when she went to school that morning. She kissed her mother goodbye, picked up her little bag, and walked out the door like it was any other day. She had no idea that when the school bell rang and the other children ran to their parents waiting outside, her mother would not be there. She had no idea that the woman who had tucked her in the night before, who had built an entire life just for the two of them, was at that very moment being murdered inside their own home. And she had no idea that the proof of who did it, the biological fingerprint of the killer himself, was already waiting to be found, scratched into existence by a mother's final act of fight and fury. What that little girl could never have known was that she would spend the next 42 years waiting for justice. And that justice would come from something so small, so fragile, so easily overlooked: a broken fingernail. If you're new to True Crime Exposed, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. This is exactly the kind of story we tell. The ones that take decades, the ones that almost disappear, and the ones where the victim refuses to let that happen. Like this video. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, and let's get into it. It was October 15th, 1981. Carmel, California. A town tucked along the Pacific coast in Monterey County. The kind of place that looks like it was painted rather than built. European-style homes with terracotta roofs, cobblestone streets winding through quiet neighborhoods, white sand beaches stretching out to a cold blue ocean. People came to Carmel to slow down, to exhale, to feel safe. Crime was not something anyone in Carmel thought much about, because Carmel was the kind of town that made you believe bad things happened somewhere else. Sonia Carmen Herrick Stone believed in that. She had chosen Carmel deliberately, carefully, as the place where she would build her new life. She was 30 years old, originally from Quebec, Canada, a single mother raising her 4-year-old daughter Sasha entirely on her own. She worked as a sales associate and merchandiser for Levi Strauss & Company, the iconic American denim brand. A steady job for a woman steadily putting her life together, piece by piece. She lived in Carmel Point, in a modest home. Just the two of them, mother and daughter, every morning and every evening. She dropped Sasha at kindergarten in the mornings, and she was there to pick her up every afternoon. That was the rhythm of their life. Simple, consistent, moving forward. On the morning of October 15th, that rhythm played out exactly as it always did. Sasha went to school, Sonia stayed home. Nothing about that morning suggested it would be the last morning of anything. But sometime around noon, a friend of Sonia's arrived at the house in Carmel Point for a visit. A normal, casual, completely unremarkable visit. The kind friends make without thinking twice. She knocked on the door. No one answered. That alone was not alarming, but something about the silence that day felt wrong in a way the friend could not quite explain. She pushed the door. She stepped inside. She called Sonia's name. Room by room, the silence answered back. And then she found her. Sonia Carmen Herrick Stone was dead inside her own home. The friend called the police. Sasha Stone was still at school, still in her classroom, still waiting for the afternoon bell, not yet knowing that the afternoon waiting for her would be the first afternoon of her life without her mother in it. The Monterey County Sheriff's Office arrived at the house and secured the crime scene. Detectives and forensic technicians moved through the space with trained, methodical precision, documenting every detail, photographing every surface, cataloging everything that had been disturbed and everything that had not. What they observed told a story immediately. There were no signs of forced entry anywhere, no broken windows, no tampered locks, no indication that anyone had broken into the house from the outside. Whoever had come through that door had either been let in or had found a way inside that left no trace of intrusion. Inside the house, there were clear signs of a struggle. Sonia had not been a passive victim. The scene showed that she had resisted, that she had moved and fought and refused to surrender to what was being done to her. The autopsy results confirmed it. Sonia Carmen Herrick Stone had been sexually assaulted and strangled to death with her own pantyhose. Not a weapon carried in from outside, something taken from her, right there in her own home, and used against her. This was not a quick, panicked attack. This was deliberate. This took time. And whoever did it had stayed until it was done. But in those final moments, in the last seconds of her life, Sonia fought back with everything she had left. Her fingers, her nails, her last remaining strength. And when the forensic technicians examined her body with the careful attention that every murder victim deserves, they found it. On her left ring finger, a broken nail. And beneath that broken nail, blood. Not Sonia's blood. The blood of the person who had done this to her. The blood she had scratched from her attacker's skin in the last moments of her life. It was the most important piece of evidence at the entire scene. And in 1981, there was absolutely nothing anyone could do with it. Forensic DNA technology, as the world now understands it, simply did not exist yet. The science of extracting a unique genetic profile from a biological sample, the kind of science that today can place a specific individual at a specific location with near absolute certainty, was still years away from being viable in a criminal investigation. The technicians collected the samples from beneath Sonia's broken fingernail. They collected samples from her body from surfaces throughout the house, from clothing and other materials with potential investigative value. They documented everything, they bagged everything, and they placed it all into the Monterey County archives, where it would sit, waiting, while the world slowly caught up to what was needed to read it. No one standing in that room in 1981 knew they were preserving a 42-year-old secret. They were just doing their jobs. But Sonia, in her final struggle, had done something extraordinary. She had left behind the answer. While the forensic work continued inside the house, detectives moved outside and began the process every murder investigation requires, going door to door through the neighborhood, asking who had seen what, who had been where, whether anything unusual had happened that day. It was during this canvass that one detective stopped at the house directly across the street and noticed something on the face of the man who answered the door. His name was Michael Scott Glazebrook. He was 25 years old. He lived directly across from Sonia's home in Carmel Point, close enough to see her front door from his own. Not a stranger. Not someone from another part of town, a neighbor. Someone whose daily comings and goings were visible to everyone on that small street, including Sonia herself. On Glazebrook's right cheek was a scratch, straight and vertical, 3 to 4 inches long. The detective asked about it. Glazebrook explained it immediately. He had scratched his face while cutting plexiglass in his garage. An accident while working. Completely routine. He offered it without hesitation. without apparent discomfort, as though the question itself were as unremarkable as the street they were standing on. But when investigators spoke with Glazebrook's parents, they heard something entirely different. Glazebrook had told them the scratch came from a fight at Monterey Peninsula College. 2 different stories. Same scratch, same man, same day. 2 completely different explanations offered to 2 completely different audiences. That inconsistency did not escape the investigators, and when they began building a fuller picture of Glazebrook's timeline, looking for an alibi, looking for any witness who could place him somewhere else during the hours in question, they found nothing. No clear alibi. No consistent account of his whereabouts at the critical time. The circumstantial evidence accumulated steadily. A neighbor who lived directly across the street from the victim. A prominent facial scratch appearing the day after the murder. The precise kind of injury a struggling, fighting woman with broken fingernails could leave on her attacker's face. 2 contradictory explanations for that scratch. No alibi. No witness to place him elsewhere. A crime scene showing no forced entry, meaning the killer had access to the house in a way consistent with someone known, trusted, or simply close enough to walk across the street unnoticed. In 1982, after nearly a year of investigation, Michael Scott Glazebrook was charged with first-degree murder in the killing of Sonia Carmen Herrick Stone. The case went to trial in 1983. The prosecution presented everything they had: the scratch, the conflicting stories, the geographic proximity, the absence of an alibi, each piece pointing in the same direction, each piece part of a larger picture that, when assembled, showed a single man at the center of it. But circumstantial evidence is only as powerful as the jury's willingness to see the whole picture rather than tear apart each individual piece. And the defense did exactly what defenses are trained to do. They attacked every element separately. The scratch could have had any number of innocent causes. No witness had seen Glazebrook enter Sonia's home. No physical evidence could conclusively place him inside at the time of the murder. And the defense was right about the single most devastating fact of the entire trial. There was no DNA. The blood beneath Sonia's broken fingernail existed. It was real. It was sitting in storage. The biological proof of who she had scratched in the last seconds of her life had been carefully preserved and professionally documented. But in 1983, not a single person in that courtroom had the tools to read it. The prosecution could not stand before the jury and point to irrefutable direct biological evidence connecting the man at the defendant's table to the woman who had died across the street. The jury deliberated. 9 votes not guilty, 3 votes guilty. A hung jury. No unanimous decision. No verdict. No conviction and no acquittal. Just 12 people who could not agree, and a legal system with no choice but to let the case sit unresolved. Michael Scott Glazebrook walked free. If you are still watching at this point, drop a comment with the words, "I am still here." Let's see who is truly following this story, because what happens next is the part that changes everything. Here is what most people do not realize about a hung jury. It is not the same as an acquittal. The double jeopardy clause of the United States Constitution prohibits a person from being tried twice for the same crime after a verdict has been issued, either guilty or not guilty. But a hung jury is not a verdict. It is the absence of one. It means 12 people couldn't reach unanimous agreement. And when there is no verdict, double jeopardy does not apply. The case remains open. The door to justice does not close. For 42 years, that door stayed open. And Michael Scott Glazebrook, the man who had walked out of that Monterey County courtroom in 1983 without a conviction, went on to live a completely ordinary life. He became a school bus driver. For decades, he transported children to school every single day. Children the same age Sasha Stone had been when she came home from kindergarten to find her world destroyed. And Sasha never stopped waiting. Through childhood, through adolescence, through adulthood, through all the years that passed, and all the anniversaries of October 15th that came and went, Sasha Stone carried the weight of what had happened to her mother and the injustice of what hadn't happened to the man she believed was responsible. She waited for the technology. She waited for the science. She waited for the world to catch up to the evidence her mother had left behind in her final fight. In 2020, it did. DNA technology had evolved to a point that investigators had never been able to imagine, standing in Sonia's home in 1981. The biological samples collected from beneath that broken left ring fingernail had been stored in the Monterey County archives for nearly 4 decades, and when the advanced testing was finally applied to them, the results came back in a way that shocked everyone who had ever been connected to this case, in a way no one could have anticipated. The details of exactly what those results revealed and exactly how the case moved toward resolution became the moment everyone who had worked this investigation and everyone who had waited for justice had spent years hoping for. And in a Monterey County courtroom, many decades after a 4-year-old girl had gone to school on an ordinary October morning and come home to an unthinkable afternoon, Sasha Stone stood up and spoke. She said, "Sonia was a wonderful woman, and we are so glad to see justice served. This is a day we have waited for a very long time. 42 years, 1 broken fingernail, 1 woman who used every last thing she had in the final moments of her life. Sonia Carmen Herrick Stone didn't survive what happened to her on October 15th, 1981, but she did something in dying that investigators couldn't do for her in life. She identified her killer. She scratched his blood from his skin with her own hands, and she held it there waiting until the world finally had the tools to hear what she was saying. Justice was not fast. Justice was not easy. Justice took 42 years and technology that did not exist the day she died. But it came. And Sasha Stone, who'd been waiting since she was 4 years old, was there to see it. That is the power of never giving up on a case. That is the power of preserving evidence, even when the science to read it does not yet exist. And that is the power of a mother who, even in her final seconds, refused to let her killer walk away clean. If this story moved you, and we believe it did, please like this video, share it so Sonia's story reaches the people who need to hear it, and subscribe to True Crime Exposed right now. We cover the cases that demand to be told, the victims who deserve to be remembered, and the moments when justice, however long it takes, finally arrives. We will see you in the next one.